Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa is due to deliver the State of the Nation address on Thursday. This year's SONA will be an opportunity to take stock of the commitments he made to the nation last year. How has the president fared so far? Let's get a sense now from Professor Alex from Den Heever, who joins us via our video link. Professor, thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us on our platform. Before we get into the specific promises the president made last year, going through this morning's newspapers, there's an immense pressure being placed on the president, not only from his alliance partners, but from opposition party leaders, saying enough with the rhetoric. We need to start seeing action. We need to start seeing real, credible, sensible plans to solve some of our crises. What's your response to that?
I think that is correct. I think we need to see results. It's not just plans. We need to see delivery of things that change things on the ground. We have seen a massive reversal on many areas of South African society since COVID, but which really reflected trends that were beginning before then. And what we're seeing is that government doesn't appear to have the capability to actually respond to these various problems. And invariably, that is about leadership. And so the question really is, what kind of leadership are we going to see that will deliver results? And we need results, not promises.
All right, well, talking about, not being able to deliver on some of their promises, I'd like to take a listen to what the president had to say on the issue of job creation during his State of the Nation address last year, noting that government cannot be solely responsible for job creation, but that rather they need to create a conducive environment for businesses to do just that. Let's take a listen.
We all know that government does not create jobs. Businesses create jobs. Facts be faced, around 80% of all the people who are employed in South Africa are employed in the private sector. The key task of government is to create the conditions that will enable the private sector.
Right, so that was a soundbite there from President Cyril Ramaphosa from last year's SONA that took place on the 10th of February. Prof, your remarks on that, the president saying government's key task is to create a conducive environment, yet we're sitting with crippling load shedding that has, crippled a number of businesses who are currently struggling to keep jobs afloat.
Yeah, so one of the critical elements of creating an enabling environment is for in important areas for government not to obstruct business from pursuing their objectives. But you also have to provide the enabling conditions. We need roads, we need electricity, we need water, we need the basics to also be provided. And what we've seen with the load shedding is that government has basically done what appears to be as little as possible to prevent load shedding and as much as possible to exacerbate it and then to shift the blame. This is incredibly dangerous. This is where the private sector does need public goods and services and good decision-making in government, and I'm afraid we haven't got it. We've got the opposite. And we've destroyed jobs. We've destroyed potential as a consequence. We are creating some of the effects that we had under COVID because of this failed energy strategy.
Yeah, your remarks there have led me perfectly to, the remarks that the president made on the electricity crisis. Of course, last year, we had no idea that we would, be entering a year with upwards of 100 days of no electricity, and that we'd, in fact, be starting in 2023 with rolling blackouts being a permanent feature. But, last year, the president seemed to announce all these plans about, unbundling Eskom and the transmission element of the state-owned entity moving away from the rest of the utility. Let's hear what he had to say about electricity last year.
In addition to closing the energy supply shortfall, we are implementing fundamental changes to the structure of the electricity sector. Eskom has established a separate transmission subsidiary and is on track to completing its own unbundling by December 2022.
Of course, that was the President detailing the unbundling of Eskom. Prof, transmission is still a division of Eskom even today. Are you at all surprised at the lack of progress in that sense?
I'm not surprised. It does suggest that the task was bigger than they thought. But it's unclear again exactly what happens to these particular strategies. You know, in some senses, the public kind of wants a result. They don't necessarily want to know how you're going to do it. They want to know that you've done something that made a difference to their lives. The President also provided a list of all the projects that they were going to approve in the various bid windows that was going to reduce our shortage of electricity and bring new supply onto the system. We only had bid window 5 with around about a third of what was promised to be approved in bid window 5 actually coming through. We've seen government, in the case of the diesel procurement process, has put obstacles in the way of Eskom being able to purchase diesel efficiently. And the only proposals to deal with emergencies have been things like car power ships. You know, it's these things that worry the public. It suggests that there isn't a unified vision, that there are lots of vested interests that are being protected in the process, which is largely the cause of why certain things just don't happen, and that would include dealing with the unbundling of Eskom, which is the right thing to do.
Yeah. You know, a popular phrase that we heard from the President last year, Professor, was this idea of a social compact, of having all sectors of South Africa coming together in consensus to address some of these sort of pressing issues that we have. I want us to take a listen to what the President had to say, and specifically the 100-day deadline that he set for himself.
We have given ourselves 100 days to finalize what I call a comprehensive social compact to grow our economy, to create jobs, and to combat hunger. This work will build on the foundation of the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, which we adopted, which remains our common program to rebuild the economy.
The President there, of course, outlining that social compact for us. Professor, to this day, I think a lot of South Africans don't even know what it entails. That 100 days, of course, came and went, and we saw no fruit of that particular social compact. Very quickly, your response to that. Is it similar to the rhetoric that we're saying we don't want to hear come the 9th of February this week?
Yes, and that social compact was going to cover a rollout of infrastructure, a massive rollout of infrastructure, substantial increase in local production, employment stimulus, expansion of energy generation capacity, none of which happened, and none of which requires a social compact. So the idea of a social compact in any way, in 100 days makes no sense. Just get on with it and do the stuff. Consult normally on these strategies as part of government. You don't need to sit at NEDLAC and come to an agreement on how to do these things. We have not seen infrastructure happening. We're seeing infrastructure decay, where I have no idea what the local production strategy would entail. But clearly whatever is being done is not happening and is unlikely to bear much fruit if it's coming through from government. When we hold business back, when we hold the private sector back from doing its job and innovating and finding its own way, we actually lose local production. So in many cases, local production is hindered by government's interference in what happens in our economy, and it becomes smaller as a consequence.
Right.
So yeah, we need results. We don't need talk.
Indeed, results, no talk. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us on our platform today. That's Professor Alex van Den Heever with the Wits School of Governance.